Welcome to 31 Media KE. This is Kimani Raitha. I want to begin today's podcast by thanking our viewers for your continued support, as well as the people who have subscribed to our channel. The support that you are giving us is invaluable, and we cannot repay you for it. Thank you very much, and continue subscribing as well as spreading the gospel about this podcast, as well as encouraging people to watch our content. I want today to begin my podcast today by addressing a few political events that have taken place over the last few days. I will begin by talking about the violence that was witnessed in Ugunja and Bungoma over the last few days. There in Ugunja, Governor Gladys Wanga was in attendance, and in Bungoma, Natembea had attended a political rally to drum up support for Seth Panyako, and shots were fired, and all hell broke loose, and it was a very, very bad situation in those two events. I am told that in Ugunja, a few people died. Now, political violence has no place in the modern democracies. It is very important for us electorates to know the kind of leaders that instigate violence. Such kind of leaders have no place in the modern society, and those are weak leaders. The reason why they sponsor violence, because definitely where there is violence, it was sponsored by somebody or a group of people. Those people who sponsor violence are people who have sensed defeat, and that is the reason why they will send goons to start the violence and disrupt rallies and make things very difficult for those people who are campaigning. And because we are going to see heightened political tensions as we walk towards 2027, we need to denounce political violence and hold people into account, especially the leaders who are perceived to be sponsoring violence. They should not be given a chance in our society. They should also not be elected to hold positions of power, because these are the kind of retrogressive leaders that will continue holding our country at ransom, and no development will be witnessed if such leaders occupy positions of leadership. So much for violence. I want to talk about the State of the Nation address that was made by the President 2 days ago. People have talked about it, and I have listened to quite a number of people talking about the State of the Nation address. There have really been quite a discussion about the State of the Nation address, beginning from the speech that the President made, as well as the content of the speech itself. And there are people who feel, and I support that people, that the speech by the President was actually sounded artificial. Now, there is somebody sleeping on the job. The speech of the President lacked a human touch. It was mechanical, it was robotic, and even the content questionable. And therefore, the people at the presidential communication team, they need to be called to task about the kind of work that they are doing. They are getting paid millions of taxpayers' money, and they are supposed to take their work very seriously. Now, zeroing in on the content of the President's speech during the State of the Nation address, he seemed to point to one dream that he holds for this country. And since he has repeated the talk about moving the nation from a third world status to a first world status, that is mainly what I'm going to talk about in today's podcast. The dream that the president has about moving our country from third world status to first world status is quite valid and quite a very good dream for all of us. For if a nation has to move in a direction that will make the citizens feel comfortable working and living in that nation, then moving towards a first world status is a very good dream and a very, very nice thing to think about. However, a first world nation was not achieved by accident or by mere talk. There were deliberate steps that were taken by the leaders of those nations in order for the first world status to be achieved. And I'm going to outline a few things that I believe may make a nation to move to a first world status if those issues are addressed. A nation that is a first world has adopted and has embraced very high values. It has a very profound value system. When I talk about values, I ask myself whether this country of ours has embraced the values that are needed for the nation to progress or for the nation to develop to a first world status. The level of corruption in this country is so high that if you mention the word corruption anywhere in any part of the world, Kenya comes to the fore. We cannot achieve a first world status if we continue condoning the levels of corruption that are there in this country. And you see, the levels of corruption can only come down if it starts from the top. Well, we have seen deliberate steps being taken by the current administration to centralize collection of money. I'm talking about collection of taxes. For example, the e-citizen system that has been used to make sure that all government money goes through that system. But haven't we heard people talking about how the system is being misused by the people up there? You see, corruption has been somewhat eradicated on the lower echelons of the society. In order for you to get a government service, you have to pay for it through the e-citizen, and therefore you do not need to bribe anyone. However, if the money that we are paying through e-citizen is not secure up there, we are only fighting corruption half-heartedly. Therefore, as long as we do not fight corruption in this country, we cannot achieve the first world status that we keep talking about. The other issue is the tendering. We have seen a very, very deliberate attempt by the government to introduce a secure way of obtaining and implementing government tenders. In the past, what has been happening is that you cannot get a government tender or a government institutional tender without knowing somebody. Sometimes you are supposed to pay a substantial amount of money for you to get the government tender. Now, as long as government tendering processes and procedures continue to be so much out of the reach of the common mwananchi, then that is another avenue of corruption that will continue making it very impossible for our nation to achieve the first world status. Another issue is the kind of work that is done by the contractors that are given work in this country. The other day I heard that even the international contractors that have been given work here in Kenya are beginning to learn the corrupt, the evil ways of our Kenyan contractors. For example, a road that is being built today anywhere in this republic is supposed to have a sidewalk. How many roads, for example in Nairobi, that are being constructed or anywhere else in this country have sidewalks? Poor work that is being done by contractors is an issue that will make it very difficult for us to reach a first world status. The infrastructure that is in first world nations is state of the art, completely done, and the work is not shoddy. Look at some of the roads that were done during Uhuru Kenyatta's regime. They are already worn out. The roads in Laikipia, for example, connecting Nyahururu and Nanyuki. Most of those roads are already beginning to get worn out. And the roads from Sipili through Karaba all the way to Makutano, the road is already full of potholes, shoddy work. How can we achieve a first world status if we continue condoning shoddy work being done by our contractors? And surprisingly, the work that they do is so overpriced. Let's talk about the SGR. The amount of money that was spent on the SGR could have been used to do the SGR all the way from Mombasa to Kisumu. But what did we witness? A lot of money was wasted in the SGR project. Therefore, the contracts, they have to be obtained legally and in open and transparent manner. And also the people who are given work, they have to do work that is of high standard, work that is acceptable, in order for us to get state-of-the-art projects in this country. Also, the taxes. This country has a very, very punitive tax regime. Many of the companies that existed during Kibaki's time and in the first term of Uhuru Kenyatta's regime have relocated to other nations where taxation is a bit fair. If we continue with our punitive tax regime, then we cannot continue talking about achieving a first world status. It is impossible. Life in Kenya is quite expensive, and it is also quite expensive for people who want to do business in this country. If we do not address this issue, then the first world status is going to continue to be a pipe dream. We may not achieve the first world status as long as we do not address corruption, as long as we do not address our value system. Somebody said, and that is my friend Gadhuo Wagishoro, that Kenyans are essentially thieves. We must stop this habit of stealing. We must be honest people. If we cannot be honest, then we can forget about being a first world nation. We will continue languishing in poverty if we do not become people of high integrity, and if we do not elect people of high integrity into positions of leadership. Let me now address the issue of education. We have seen a very serious mismanagement of the education by the ruling elite since 2022. Capitation to public schools have become something very, very difficult. In fact, the government is not providing financing to schools. Also, the amount of money that has been released to schools has been cut so that it has almost been cut by half. For example, during Uhuru Kenyatta's time, public day secondary schools were receiving an amount of 22,000 or thereabouts. How about today? The principals of public schools and the head teachers are suffering day in, day out because the amount of money that has been released to these schools do not even get anywhere near 17,000 Kenya shillings. And these principals and these leaders of schools are supposed to continue discharging their duties effectively. How can they do that? They cannot pay suppliers. How can they pay suppliers when the money is not enough, yet they are not supposed to ask learners to pay any school fees on top of what they have been allowed by the government to charge? If we continue mismanaging education in this country, then we can forget about a first world status of this country. Also, how do we boast about our education if all we do is send those students of ours, the bright students, to other nations? They go get sponsored outside there. And I am not saying that it is bad for them to be sponsored outside the country, but we continue exporting our skilled labor to other countries. Why? Because we do not have employment in our country. If we do not address unemployment, then we can forget about the first world status. Look at the kind of unemployment that is in this country today. But because our leaders are only thinking about maintaining power, remaining in positions of power, and therefore they spend a lot of our money campaigning and appeasing the electorate through empowerment programs that do not make sense, we will continue seeing unemployment rising. It will not go anywhere. We need to think about industrializing this country. Kenya has a shortfall of energy supply. In fact, there are places in this country that experience power blackouts so often that they have given up. They have started thinking about alternatives to power their businesses. And you see, those alternatives are not by any means cheap. Those alternatives are normally very expensive. And so what happens? Running business, the cost of doing business goes up because of the high cost of energy. Because the supply of energy from the national grid is not reliable. And then the alternative power sources also is very expensive. And therefore it becomes very difficult for industries to set base in our country, including rural areas. If we need rural areas to develop, we need to set up industries. We cannot set up industries in rural areas where we do not have electricity. Therefore, electricity is another issue that needs to be addressed for us to achieve a first world status. And finally, health. We cannot have a first world nation where people cannot access affordable health services. Kenyans have to go to India to be treated for cancer. Why? Is it impossible for our government to build cancer centers in this country? State-of-the-art cancer centers in this nation. I believe it is possible. But if we continue taking our sick patients to nations abroad, and even our leaders, when they get sick, they go abroad. I have heard, and I do not know whether the rumor is true, that Oburu Odinga is abroad. We saw what happened to Raila Odinga. He went abroad to get treated. I'm very sure if our president got sick today, God forbid, he will not seek treatment in this nation. He cannot go to a local health center to seek treatment. He will have to go abroad to seek treatment. Our members of parliament, they have an insurance scheme that makes it possible for them to go get treatment abroad. How about the local citizenry? The SHA, is it working? I hear people saying that SHA is working. Is it adequate? Is it adequately addressing the health problems and challenges that we have in this country? I heard the president say that if you go to a hospital and the medical practitioners there ask for payment, you report them to the police. Is it true? When you go to a hospital, SHA is not paying for everything. Therefore, we need to think about our health system in order for us to move our country to a first world status. Sick citizens cannot be productive. Sick citizens can only consume. They cannot be productive. I'm going to end my podcast at that point. And thank you, viewers of That One Media KE, for your continued support. May God bless you. Continue to subscribe, continue to share, and continue to view our content. And don't forget to like. Welcome, and God bless you.